Okay, so it's just gone 12:30, so we'll kick off. Welcome to the IP Australia Patent Examiner Recruitment Information Session. My name's Gail Sutton. I joined IP Australia in 2021 as a patent examiner in our process engineering section. I am now part of the Patents Training Academy and support our trainees, and I'm chairing today's information session. I'd like to commence with an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm hosting this information session from the lands of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands from which you are all joining me today. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and I celebrate the diversity of First Nation peoples and their ongoing cultures and connection to their land, country, and the waters of Australia. I'd also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders peoples who are here with us online today. So just a quick bit of housekeeping here as well. So as mentioned before, if you could just double check that your microphones are on mute during the presentation, that would be appreciated. And that we are recording this session for the benefit of any who can't attend today, and we'll provide the recording to your email address that you have provided when registering for this session. If you're not comfortable being recorded, I would get you to turn your camera off. That would be fantastic. If you do have any questions during the presentation, we will be answering them at the end rather than during. You're welcome to either scan the QR code on the slide or head to slido.com and pop in the code, which you can see on the screen here. I've also provided a direct link in the chat, so feel free to pop questions in there. If you see a question that appeals to you and you'd like answered, feel free to click the thumbs up to like or upvote it, and we will do our best to answer the questions in the level of interest that we get them. So we understand that most people who are thinking of applying to be a patent examiner have no idea what patent examination means and what we do here at IP Australia. So that's much of the point of today. This training session is an opportunity for us to introduce ourselves, tell you more about the examiner's role and the training process, and provide a little bit of information about the application process, as well as giving you the opportunity to ask questions. And then I guess just as a simple kickoff, I'd like to introduce Andrew Wilkinson, who is the manager of the Patents Examination Group.
Thank you, Gail. Just checking you can hear me okay. Okay, excellent. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for your interest. I'm going to talk a little bit about IP Australia and patent examination to give you a sense of what we do. So IP Australia is the Australian government agency that administers intellectual property rights and legislation relating to patents, trademarks, industrial designs, and land breeders' rights. So today we're, of course, talking about patents. So we take those applications for patents and those other IP rights and make an assessment on whether the applications meet the requirements of the law that's applicable. In this case, the Patents Act is one of those key pieces of information. If it meets those requirements, we grant a patent, an IP right. So in terms of the job of a patent examiner, that means, in a sense, assessing basically against a number of key criteria or characteristics. Very briefly, that would be, is this thing before me, this invention, is it new? And is it inventive over what's out there? And can it be used in industry? So that's, in a nutshell, that's a key part of the role. So why is that an important thing for Australia and for the Australian government? Well, we believe and we know, based on evidence, that the patent system makes a positive contribution to the global economy and the global innovation system. We know that IP-savvy companies drive economic growth and new jobs, and these IP-savvy companies support and encourage technological innovation, promote investment in Australia, and also bring new products and services to the market in Australia, which is, of course, a benefit to Australians. So wanted to talk a little bit about working at IP Australia, the kind of environment you find yourself in. So when we ask our current employees what keeps them working at IP Australia, we generally hear three key things: the purpose, purposeful work we do, the people that we work with, and the culture associated with those people, and of course, the balance, the work-life balance is another key thing. So this is where I thought I'd share a little bit about my experience working in IP Australia. I've been here around 15 years. I was an examiner myself in the physics technologies. Since then, I've had done various things at IP Australia, including policy, and now back in the examination group. In terms of the environment, I think it's a great culture from my perspective, a family-friendly, a flexible culture. We value our people. We know how STEM talent and qualifications are very sought after, as you would know, and we're no different like Australia. So we try to create the best environment we can to retain and grow our people. For me personally, I've worked part-time, for example. I've worked in the job share in the past to bring up a young family. So for me, it's been very flexible and a place I've wanted to stay. I've spent most of my career here. In terms of that work-life balance I mentioned today, or that flexibility I mentioned today, more than 80% of our employees are working remotely for at least part of the week. And we have over 200 of our 1,100 people working in a fully remote situation. And basically, we've almost got people in every state and territory across Australia. So we're really distributed, but we have a big emphasis on staying connected in that hybrid environment. So to me, this is really a testament to how IP Australia has adapted and embraced the shift we've seen in how and where we work. As you probably experienced through COVID. I mean, prior to COVID, we had this, we were well placed, and we had a big focus on flexibility prior to COVID, which served us well during that period. And we understand, the importance of this to both attracting and retaining staff. So just to finish up, I thought I'd add a little bit about this particular recruitment campaign. So you may be aware we have a candidate kit that includes a lot of information, so please have a look at that. Information about the roles and the application process, and a wealth of information. So please do have a look at that. Of course, today we'll answer any questions we can as well. We're recruiting at the moment across most technology areas, and broadly within IP Australia, we refer to chemical, electrical, and mechanical as three categories, but really that's to cover all technologies that are out there. We're looking for scientists and engineers with qualification and experience in specific technical fields that are outlined in that kit I mentioned. Our greatest need at the moment is in chemical and mechanical type technologies, where we'll be primarily recruiting in biotechnology, chemical compounds, immunology, biotherapeutics, applied chemistry, and pharmaceuticals, as well as, I mentioned, general mechanical engineering and medical devices. So you can see there's a wide range of technologies there. So together with that information pack and the session today, we hope we give you information you need to make an informed decision about working at IP Australia. So hopefully that's been helpful. And Gail, I'll hand back over to you. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much, Andrew. Next, I'm just going to introduce one of our current patent examiners to give a bit of a perspective about what it's like to work as an examiner here at IP. So Amy McGrath, you're up.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm Amy McGrath. My background is in biotechnology, and before I joined IP Australia, I was doing a postdoc at the University of Wollongong. And my funding was running out for my contract ran out, so I needed a job ASAP. I knew I didn't want to do lab work, but I still wanted to stay in science, and I really liked reading up about different research out there. So this job sounded great to me. So I applied, and I've been here for just over 3 years now. So as a patent examiner, just to kind of reiterate what Andrew was talking about, we use our technical background to understand the invention, and then with the patent law, we determine a number of things, but mainly whether the invention is new and whether it is actually inventive, which might sound funny, but true. So I think the skills that you really need for this is to have the ability to digest a lot of information and then really use that technical background and the patent law to make an informed decision. And that decision could be whether, or if you're going to grant the patent, or if there are some outstanding issues that the applicant needs to fix up before granting. And in that case, you'll write a report just stating those issues. So you really need to also have effective written communication as well. In saying that, you do learn all these skills on the job as well. So I just certainly did not have these skills when I first started. So don't stress about that. So what I really love about working here in IP Australia is you get to see some really cool inventions. And it's even better when you get to see them a few years later after you've looked at the application and you get to see them out in the real world. So one of them is, I think it's called the Game Changer Burger at Grilled, where they feed cows a specific seaweed that reduces methane emissions. And I was one of the people that examined one of those patents. So that was really cool. And as a group, we got to go out and eat the burgers. It was awesome. The other thing is, I'm a bit of a science nerd, so I really love reading up on new science out there. And I also like the fact that I got to use my degrees. I spent a lot of money on them, so I was very happy to continue on with that. And also the autonomy over the case. I have the autonomy over my decisions, whether I accept it or not. But in saying that, there are so many people around that you can discuss cases with, any decisions or any curly issues. So while at the end of the day, you're making your own decision, you have a lot of people out there who are supporting you and who are very open to discussing anything. And then the work-life balance is amazing. As I said, I came from an academia background where you weren't exactly encouraged to take annual leave, and you were encouraged to work over 10 hours a day and on weekends. Certainly not the case here. You actually do have a work-life balance. You're encouraged to take annual leave, and you also have the flexibility of a workday. So for me, I work 3 days in the office in Canberra and I work 2 days at home. And when I'm at home, I will sometimes take 2 to 3 hours off during the day just to go to the exercise, or go to the gym or do some Pilates and have lunch before I come back and finish my workday. So that was amazing. It was such a refreshing change from academia. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have at the end as well. Thanks, that's it from me.
Thanks, Amy. And I can certainly resonate with the life-work balance, as we like to call it here. We work hard here at IP Australia, but we work efficiently and we work as a team. And we also make sure that we work sustainably, and that's a really productive environment to have. I've come from industry and had a relatively similar experience. So that's worth acknowledging. Stepping across, I would like to introduce Austin Smith from the Patents Training Academy.
Thanks, Gail. Yes, I'm Austin Smith. It's wonderful to meet you all. I am one of the learning community leaders that helps facilitate and organize the training that you are potentially going to be involved in as prospective candidates as patent examiners. One of the things that IP Australia really highlights and wants to prioritize is, as Amy was saying, giving you the opportunity to utilize the skills that you have developed through your academic experience, your industry experience, what have you, in the fields of STEM, and continue to apply that and utilize it in new ways. But one of the other great things at IP Australia is that there's a lot of capacity to expand your knowledge, expand what you're aware of, see new things, discover new ideas as you're reading up and examining these other applications, and also develop new skills in regard to the specific quality of patent examination. I've been at IP Australia for coming up on 11 years, and in the Training Academy for coming up on 4. But as I came into IP Australia, I didn't have a lot of specific experience in the applied chemistry examination field that I ended up working in for several years. So one of the exciting things that you can do as a patent examiner, and one of the things that we offer is for new patent examiners, is coming through into the job into a training academy that will help broaden your skill base and also train you up on what you need to know about the legal system, about how the Patents Act works, how intellectual property works in the first place. And through all of that training period, you are being paid to learn, which is a pretty exciting thing for those of you that are lifetime learners. So the Training Academy is a designated section of the organization that will help to facilitate and guide you or guide new patent trainees through a 3-stage competency-based program to upskill and learn how to examine patents. The program is broken up into 3 stages. The first stage runs up to about 6 months, which will occur in the Academy section, where you will engage in fundamental training to learn the basics of how examination works. This will be through a lot of classroom style and coach guided training. So if you've missed that university experience of sort of learning new things in that classroom environment, it's a great way to learn the new material and learn the new ideas. From there, you'll move into a 6-month transitional stage where you will continue developing new skills with the academy, focusing on some more advanced topics with regards to patent examination, and then transition into more on-the-job training in a core examination section. That will then be followed by a final 12-month consolidation stage of your training, where you will build capability and confidence in being able to examine applications, generate reports, and ultimately work towards gaining your acceptance delegation, which will make you a fully fledged examiner able to work comparatively independently. So the Training Academy is really a part of the first 8 or 9 months of your experience or of a new examiner's experience. And a typical week will generally involve 2 to 4 what we call learning communities. These are the classroom style sessions that I mentioned before that give you opportunity to discuss the new theory you're learning, while also apply it in workshops that are led by trainers with examiner experience like myself. These are all run in a virtual classroom, so regardless of whether you are working at one of our offices in Canberra or Melbourne or our new Sydney hub, or whether you're working remotely anywhere across the country, you'll be on an equal playing field with all of the other trainees. These sessions will also be run in a broad sense. Those of you with chemical backgrounds will be working with those with mechanical or engineering backgrounds, and with those with computing backgrounds, all learning together about the basics of how the fundamentals of examination work. Supplementing those sessions, though, you'll also work with a workplace coach who will generally be assigned 2 to 3 trainees in a similar or the same technical background, same or similar discipline, and they will help you work one-on-one and in small group settings to apply the general principles that you're learning to the specifics of your technological background. This very close coaching and mentoring will also allow you to engage in both simulated and live casework from an early stage of your training. Even during those first 6 months when you're learning the basics, you will be working on live, real, actual patent applications, which is pretty exciting in terms of getting up to speed and feeling like you're making a contribution to the goals of IP Australia. All of this is further supplemented by online learning modules to help introduce new ideas, and a number of other support networks that we have in place to help welcome you, engage you, and help you feel confident as you enter into IP Australia. Thanks, Gail.
Thanks, Austin. You're making me want to go back to the Training Academy again. It is a great place that encourages this real culture of curiosity and scholarship, which is all the way through your career as a patent examiner. And that's quite a unique thing to have in a workplace. So that's one of the perks. From a direct trainee experience, I'm just going to introduce David Stokey, who's one of our recent trainee graduates.
Hey, everyone. Yep, I'm David. I've just been at IP Australia for over 2 years now. And while that sounds like a long time, that's just at the level where you're qualified to be an AD. So I was going to talk a bit about what a day in the life of a trainee patent examiner looks like, more or less in the first 6 months, because that was probably the biggest culture shock for me. I came from an academia background, and I went running and screaming away from that straight into IP Australia. And the idea I can second with Austin, getting paid to learn was a miracle for me. And so in the first 6 months, it really did feel like you were being stepped back into a classroom where there were always people on hand to help control and monitor your learning and your progress. So you never felt like you were stagnated, and you never felt like you got told to work it out yourself. And they let you really have time to percolate the ideas that they were teaching, because as a patent examiner, especially a trainee patent examiner, you are introduced to a lot of new concepts that you would never have thought about during your technical training. And these concepts take a little while to wrap your head around, and having so many good people on hand to sort of talk through these issues and questions that get raised is invaluable to the learning experience. So in my case, going through the first 6 months, Austin was the person that trained me. So cheers, Austin. But then we also would get the technology specific coaches that you would also talk to on a day-to-day basis. We would get the online platforms that Austin mentioned, but we also had, in my intake at least, talks from people with specific experiences within IP Australia. So for instance, during my intake, we had talks from people that helped develop the legislation that we're using and how they interpreted it and how it was meant to be interpreted. We also had talks from third parties that would come in to teach us how to best apply our writing, both for clarity and how to communicate with attorneys, which may not always be as straightforward as you'd hope. And finally, we would also be given buddies within the section, people that were 6 months to a year ahead of us, but still in the training program. And they were just there if needed. So it could be who to talk to in the department, or how an outlet for asking the most embarrassing questions you don't ever want to utter. Even if it's things like, oh, how do I talk to the library people? Something as simple as that, someone's always on hand to answer that question. Or simply where to get a good coffee. So Gail was my buddy, and sort of helped me guide through all the sticky processes that might potentially come up in the first 6 months. So as Austin mentioned, you do work on live cases all throughout your trade, very early in the training and beyond. And even in the training academy, you see things that perhaps not every examiner would otherwise see. I remember the first case that I ever had, I showed it to my supervisor and she said, oh, well, that's new. I've never seen that before. And then it was working with her to say, I know it's a problem, but how do I best address it? And then as you progress from the training academy and into section, where you start to look at more technology specific cases and start working at a faster clip, you're never left alone. There's always going to be people that you can talk to and reach out to if things crop up. And the technologies that you see will never always fall exactly into your wheelhouse. So there's always something new to look at and something new to explore. So the example that I like to give is in about halfway through my training period, in the space of a week, I looked at a new design of a battery, and then housing for a new type of solar cell, and then a human composting facility. You can get some really weird and strange variations that always make the job look fresh and make the job interesting. I guess if I had one takeaway from my experience in the training academy and learning through IP Australia, is that you are never out of options. There's always someone to talk to. There is always help available, and you're always given enough time and information to succeed in what you're doing. Everyone will help you and support you at every step of the way.
Thanks, Dave. That's really appreciated. I can certainly reflect on sharing the experience of the weird, crazy patents you see. Every time I go to my hairdresser now, she wants to know what patents I've looked at ever since the day I told her about the compressed air cannon that pushed cows off the train tracks before the train came. So that was unusual, but yeah, I tell you what, my hairdresser loves hearing about patents and inventions, which is quite surprising, really. Look, we're going to move on to questions now. As I said earlier, we do have the Slido poll to pop questions into, and I will do our best to answer as many as possible. I can see that there's a few in there, so what we'll do is we'll do our best, and then when the session time's up, we'll also collate the remaining questions and send them out to you as an FAQ sheet, along with access to a link to the recording, because I did see a couple of people did have to leave early. So I think probably the first question that we're going to start with, I'll throw this one across to you, Amy, is a couple of questions about the transition from academia, and if you had any issues coming from academia to the organisation, and also, I guess, about the application process, and what did you emphasise about your academic career that helped you here at IP?
Yeah, so in terms of any difficulties, I don't really think there was anything. I think the transition was made quite seamlessly, being in a training academy, because you're not really working on your technical background anymore, but you're learning about the law side. So it's a very different environment, but it was more casual and everyone is very helpful. So the transition is quite seamless to me. In terms of the academic CV versus this one, I think I'm trying to remember what I put on my CV. It was a while ago, but I think I just elaborated on my latest or my postdoc experience and what I did in there. So I mentored a few students. I had some honours students, so I put my experiences with that in there. I was also on some conference organising committees, so I put that experience in there as well. And because of my biotech background, and I think a lot of chemical sections would appreciate this, is any techniques that you did during your postdoc or academia. So for example, I have a structural biology background, so I put X-ray crystallography, protein and peptide, protein and chemical compound interactions in there as well. And any conference presentations, whether that be poster presentations or oral presentations, I put in there as well. Hopefully that helps or answers your questions.
Great, thank you so much, Amy. Next question I've got, I'm going to throw across to you, Andrew. One very sharp person has asked about what the impact of AI is on how we do our day-to-day here at the Patent Office, especially given how text-based our work is.
Thanks, Gail. Yeah, very topical question. That question. So I think there's probably a number of potential impacts. So, of course, on the patent system itself, AI or generative AI or AI more generally could have some disruptive impacts on the patent system, and IP Australia has done some forward thinking on that, and there is some work on our website that you potentially we could leave a link to, so you can have a look at that if that's of interest to you. In terms of the role of a patent examiner, from my perspective, it is a complex decision-making process best done by a human, and so I don't see that changing anytime soon. So the way we are looking at AI technology, whether it's generative AI or AI otherwise, is how can we leverage that technology to support examiners, support humans to do their job effectively. So, as another, I guess, disruptive technology was the internet. It's a very useful technology, but also created access to a lot of information and growing information. So, for example, we can leverage AI tools like AI search tools to help us understand the information that's out there. And as we've said gauging or assessing whether an invention is new and inventive compared to what's out there is a core part of an examination role. So you can see how AI technology can help us do that, but ultimately it's a human decision that's made. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. So if people are familiar with this, it's sort of that concept of augmenting humans rather than replacing humans. So I think that would be probably the core of what I'd say there. Hopefully that's answered the question. I mean, just generally with AI, you know, I think a lot of people here would know that AI technology has been around for a long time. Generative AI technology is, I guess, somewhat newer, or at least in the public consciousness. But, you know, we've been leveraging AI to help us, again, with automation for some time. And so I think IP Australia is pretty well placed and kind of, I would say, on the forward edge, of government use of AI. So I think while there are some challenges presented by AI, it's also a very exciting time. And there's opportunities there to be part of that. How do we make the most of new technology as it comes in? And of course, we do see AI popping up in the applications that come in through the door. So an understanding of AI is something that examiners increasingly need. But as we talked about, we have various programs to support examiners expand their knowledge of new technologies. So AI is maybe linked to other new technologies coming down the line. So, Ral, I'm hoping that kind of answers the question.
That's great. Thank you. Better you than me, Andrew. Look, I'm just going to answer a whole bunch of questions that have come through from different people about, you know, what kind of background and experience and qualities and skills are we looking for here? I've got someone asking, you know, I'm an ICT professional. Is that relevant? Electrical engineering. Look, the first thing I would say is that effectively STEM backgrounds and also legal backgrounds are highly desirable. A background and at least an undergraduate qualification in a STEM field is mandatory for this position. Postgrad, as you would have seen in the FAQs, is not mandatory, but of course is highly regarded. Basically, the first place I'll refer you to is in the candidate kit is Table A, which gives a description in detail of all of the disciplines that we're looking for. As Andrew said at the start, we are looking across all of our technology fields, so the broader electrical, mechanical and chemical streams. And that table will give you more details about the types of fields that are suitable. So that's probably your first port of call. If you're still unsure, I will provide on the final slide a contact email address for Patents Recruitment, and also you are more than encouraged to contact the contact officer for a chat or ask any questions as well. The next question I'd like to pop forward is, Safina, I might pop this one to you, but could you have a chat and talk about what is the typical sort of 5 to 10 year career trajectory for examiners here, particularly given that you've done some pretty unique things during your time here?
Thanks, Gail. I suppose I'd start by saying there isn't necessarily a typical trajectory. I think there are lots of options that are available in terms of your professional development, whether that might be something like, you know, going along to a conference to get a bit of an understanding of where the science is at the minute, you know, what things that we can be keeping an eye out for, and through those opportunities, you may then seek to do, you know, apply for various courses that may, you know, kind of build your skills in that area. So I've been here for about 20 plus years, and I have had the pleasure, the luckiness, I suppose, of doing various different professional development things, whether it is attending conferences. I've also become a hearing officer, which is kind of the next step beyond examination. When we grant an application, or once we accept an application, there is an opportunity for the people out there in the innovation space to kind of look at what we have said we're going to allow to proceed to grant, and if they think, for instance, oh, that looks like something I've done, that there is a process for opposing the grant of that patent, and there's a process there that we go through, where essentially you kind of, as a hearing officer, get to sit down and be a judge of sorts, and listen to arguments from the two sides, and then have to ultimately make a decision, and then provide reasoning for that decision, in what is quite a thorough and complex legal document that gets published and all that sort of stuff. I've also done things like go across to different departments within the APS. We have professional opportunities that way. So there are a range of things that people do. Also, the skills of patent examiners, I suppose, are quite often sought after within IP Australia as a whole. So we have different parts of the organisation, such as policy, which Andrew mentioned earlier. Often examiners go up there to have a little stint to understand that aspect of the IP system, and you could come across to the Training Academy, for instance, which is what happened with me after about 15 years here. So I got to use my skills in a different way to train the next generation.
Thank you, Safina. The next question I'd like to ask, Austin, I'm going to throw this one to you because you are one of our remote workers who works from home 5 days a week. Can you give a run through of typical methods that we use to maintain and drive team connection for remote staff?
Yeah, so there's a number of different solutions that we have. A lot of our work as patent examiners is fairly sort of independent, but we do encourage a lot of collaboration, and some of our work does require collaboration with our teams. We utilize Microsoft Teams a lot to keep in touch on a more sort of quick pace communication, using it for all of our video conferencing and video discussion, as well as our communication. More broadly, we do have, as Andrew mentioned, a wide number of remote workers across the agency. So especially if you're working from one of our capital cities, there are usually hubs that develop not necessarily to come in and work together, but to regularly meet up and stay in touch with people that are working at IP Australia near you. In terms of the team's outreach as well, it's something we're very conscious of, making sure that there is regular opportunities to stay in touch, to collaborate and stay in communication. I'm sure there are others here online as well that have worked remotely or worked away from the office for periods of time as well, that might be able to speak to any other personal experiences as well. But from my understanding, speaking to a lot of our remote workers, we've had a lot of training intakes recently that have been dominated by remote workers, and in fact our current intake is entirely remote. The experience has been very well received. People have felt connected, have felt tied into the agency, and not just that they are hovering somewhere on the periphery in the ether.
Thanks, Austin. That's really great. And I guess probably as part of that, you've probably got the idea. There is a question here asking if the training period is online or office-based. Look, it is up to you. Our current intake of trainees who's recently just started is 100% online, and there's no problems with that. Just a quick question that's going to come up a few times. Safina, could you talk about how many positions we're looking to recruit for, and if there's a very rough split of the areas we're going for?
So we are looking to recruit about 30 people, give or take. It kind of depends on the type of applicants that we get. And as Andrew has mentioned earlier, it's largely in the chemical and mechanical areas that we have the greatest need. But that doesn't mean that there isn't any positions in what we call our elect sections. I'll just touch on a question that I saw pop up on that as well, about somebody being in the merit pool. And whether you need to reapply. I'll just say that in terms of being in the merit pool, the panels have just been selected, and the panels will be looking to the merit pool as part of their initial process in terms of the next steps. So we can get back to you about that more specifically. Yeah, so hopefully that answers a couple of questions. I'll mention one other thing, which is in terms of coming to Canberra, we do usually plan a couple of visits for the trainees during the first period where they're within the training academy. But we will talk you through that, and we do have a flexible approach to how we apply that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Safina. Look, I do see a question here, and thank you to the person who was brave enough to ask this, and it says, can you talk about some of the difficult parts of the role so you can let us know if this role might not be for us? Look, I think that's a really valid question, and I think some of the things that are useful as a patent examiner is you really do need an attention for detail. You need a thirst for knowledge. You need to be interested in the details. You need to be willing to collaborate with a whole lot of diverse, different people. For me as a classic chatty person, there are some wildly intelligent people here who stomp all over me on a technical front, and it is an absolute pleasure to work with them. So you'll be working with lots of different people. I think that there is a lot of independence and autonomy in the work, so you will need to be self-directed and self-motivated is another thing as well. So they're probably some of the things that I would suggest is worth considering. And then I guess the other thing as well is that if you come and give it a try, come and apply, pop your application in the hat, get into the training process and see how you go. We're always thirsty for new talent here. I'm going to chuck the next question across to David, just because I know that he and I sort of have had a good run through the training process. And someone's asked about how do we manage risk in the organisation, and what's the attitude towards failure or when things don't go as planned? And this is not to say that David's a failure. He's a spectacular examiner. But when you're learning, you get things wrong. So do you want to talk about that aspect, Dave?
Yes, it is a part of my expertise, unfortunately. And just to follow up on what you said about earlier about whether you're suitable for a patent examiner, the way that I always thought about it was that what makes me a great patent examiner is the same reason why I'm terrible at parties. I like to point out people's and flaws in their arguments. So if you ever get that hankering, this job might be for you. So if the question's relating to risk management and attitude towards failure, then a big part of the job, especially at the training stage, is that you will be QA'd on everything. No one expects you to get things 100% right immediately off the bat. There'll always be scope for improvement, both as a trainee and for someone that's 10 years in the field. And they don't expect you to do things 100% right. And then the QAer or your direct supervisor will always give you helpful and constructive feedback. And even if things do slip through and go to the attorneys, I had one case where I misunderstood something. The attorney will 100% let you know. And then it's just business like usual. And so the final thing I would say is that a lot of this job is about reasonable justification. It's if you can justify the argument that you put, then your argument is not wrong. It is not a failed argument. It's taken in view of your field and your training and your expertise in the knowledge. So that example that I gave where something slipped through is because I viewed it in a different way than the attorneys intended. And the attorneys just said, no, we think it's like this. And then with that view in mind, I could re-examine and then go on with my life. There was no pressure to get things 100% right. There was no recriminations for seeing it differently than how the attorneys viewed it. As long as I could justify the argument, that was perfectly fine.
Thanks, Dave. That's fantastic. And then I guess, Andrew, given that you're a little bit higher up in the organisation, you engage with risk quite frequently at your level. Do you want to have a quick chat as well from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Gail. The organisation has or understands that to innovate, to improve, takes and experimentation, and as we know, that includes the failure to some extent. So, in terms of the pattern examination environment, the way quality review was mentioned, right? The mindset there is one of a learning mindset. It's not about getting something wrong. It's about how do we do better next time for the customer. So that's really ingrained now, that learning mindset in how we approach our work. And as Gail mentioned, we really have a team-based environment. And so if there's something you're unsure about, it's there's a lot of support there. And it's expected really that you'll talk to someone, get a different perspective, perhaps talk to someone with more experience or a particular expertise, and they can really help you make a decision that has been communicated, whether that's granting a patent or giving reasons to the customer of why, but you're not granting a patent at this point in time. So, but yeah, I think IP Australia as a whole, being part of the innovation ecosystem, we pride ourselves on being innovative as well. So we know that embracing appropriate risk is part of that. And the risk management framework, which I think, I'm not sure if it's available publicly. Hopefully it is, but that's actually an award-winning framework, and that's something that you can take a look at and see our risk appetite across a number of areas. So hopefully that adds a little bit there, Gail.
That's great. And also, I just want to sort of link into something that Andrew said, talking about operating in teams. And I can see here that someone's asked a question about, can you discuss KPIs in the job? And I think that is always worth talking about. Here at IP Australia, as examiners, our job is to examine. And basically, we do have a certain amount of work we need to get done. We have what we call a pipeline of work. So the work's coming through and it chops and changes depending on what industry is really hot and submitting lots of applications at this point in time. So from direct experience, I've seen an awful lot of batteries coming through because, the battery field is pretty hot topic right now. We work as a team. We work in sections of about 30 people and in smaller cells of about 4 to 5 people, basically. And we collectively achieve our goals, basically. So what you do in a week will usually be tailored to your strengths. Some people are better doing what we call original search and examination, which is where you start looking for stuff from scratch, and it's much more detailed and really digging into the nitty-gritty and looking in the back end of all of the literature and the whole known universe to see what you can find. And then some people are really good at writing a much simpler report where there's a bit of stuff to work off. So yes, we do have KPIs here, like any, to be frank, sensible workplace, but we work and we achieve them as a team, leveraging up your strengths. And we've only got time for one more question. So what I'd like to do is ask Safina about, there's a few questions about, hey, I have, strength in multiple STEM disciplines, or what if I want to apply for more than one stream?
So just on that one, obviously something that we're acutely aware of is that many of our technology areas really have crossover between them. So in terms of the application process, you can apply for one and understand that our different recruitment panels will often share the information about if they think that you're more suited to another panel. But you can also reach out to your contact officer, and they are listed in the candidate kit, and they'll be able to help you with specifics about, this is probably the best one to apply for. But I did see one particular question about one was physics and computing. Both of those areas are within the electrical stream. So if you apply to the electrical stream, you'll be considered for both those areas.
Thank you, Safina. So look, that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you all for all your questions. I can see that we do have a few questions left in Slido that we haven't yet got to. At the risk of sounding a little bit like a broken record, do have a look at the candidate kit. There's some great details in there about how long the application process takes, including a breakdown of the stages if you're successful proceeding through, and also more details on the technology streams and who the contact officers are. So if you do have any more questions, feel free to either reach out to the contact officers, or there's the patents recruitment at IP Australia email address. And just a gentle reminder that applications close on the 24th of March. So we really do hope to see a few of your applications in there. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to have you all here. What I'll be doing now is just ending the recording and closing up the meeting. So thank you for your time and good luck.